Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. This is Romola D from Romola D Reports, and I'm very pleased and honored this afternoon to be here with Ray Schumann of the Legal Co-op and Denise Rosado, also an attorney. Both Ray Schumann and Denise Rosado are attorneys with a very illustrious career behind them and hopefully ahead of them as well. Ray Schumann tells me he has about 20 years of litigation behind him. He's worked for judges, he's worked for prosecutors, he's also worked for the ACLU, and he's worked in the Superior Court system. Denise Rosado has a varied background, really, both in law and in public affairs from Rutgers and from Arizona State University. She has a background also in immigration law. She's worked in family court. She's worked with the AmeriCorps program, with the Police Athletic League, with FEMA, with the Mitigation Unit, with the U.S. Department of Commerce, and has a really extraordinary resume. So I'm so pleased to welcome you both to this conversation. Ray and Denise, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Ramon, for having me.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You both have absolutely stellar resumes and such an extraordinary background. And it seems like now you are both working together on some very important issues and subjects, which is why we are gathered here today. So, feel free to jump right into what exactly you're working on currently, the importance of it, and, your own thinking and perspective regarding the significance of it all, where it's all going currently.
Well, let me just give an intro because I'm very excited to have Denise join in these efforts to help harassment victims, otherwise known as targeted individuals. And this is an effort that originated, as you may know, through the Legal Co-op, which was a GoFundMe campaign that I started last year, at the very end of last year. And that campaign was directly addressed to victims of harassment, victims of gang stalking, targeted individuals, however they wish to define themselves. These are people who are being persecuted, they're being harassed in public through sometimes very advanced technological means. Sometimes it's all just harassment at the street level. And that variety of harassment, wherever they go, is something that pursues them. So that campaign was started, and I wanted to know if people wanted some work done on the legal aspect of this. I saw it as a civil rights problem that can be fixed partly in the courts. So I started it, people started donating. I would get little tiny donations. Sometimes I would just get an email of somebody sharing a story and encouraging me on. And I have to tell you that these stories are amazing. They're from all over the world and every gamut and every level of wealth and education. And it tells me that the FBI statistics that are on the record now for stalking are actually probably understating the problem gravely. The idea there was that there were multiple, maybe 3-4 million people suffering from gang stalking. I think that number is low. I think that this is a phenomena that is happening all over the United States, all over the world, and it is a crisis. So the Legal Co-op is there to address it. When I first got started, I had nothing. I didn't have a computer to do this. I didn't have anything to do it. It was completely a shoestring operation, almost literally. And then all of a sudden a church, for example, would contact me and donate some money. Nobody that I knew, just a church that I never even heard of. Somebody would come across from another town and say, I think you need to have this, and give me. This entire office where I'm sitting is completely donated. The table, the computer, the chair, everything. And the paper. People are coming together to solve this problem to help others as well. And, the latest news, well, I've got my website. It's thelegalcoop.wordpress.com, and I'll spell it out, thelegalcoop.wordpress.com. My email, thelegalcoop, spelled the same, thelegalcoop@protonmail.com. And you can go there and see what we've done since last year on a shoestring budget, probably less than $1,000 a month. We already have a 2-year restraining order against an experienced gang stalker with avowed police connections. where he said the police told me to do this. A guy who was, threatening to shoot people, a guy who was putting an enclosure of tarp around to box in a victim. And basically, just Ramola, by the way, I think we switched to your screen somehow.
I'm sharing screen just to show your website as you speak.
Okay, good. So that's exactly it. And when you go to the latest updates, that has the work that's been done, the research that's been done, the constant, nonstop effort that we're putting into this right now. And this is just the latest where the United Nations is doing this whole electronic or cyber torture effort and investigation. You've seen that. And the ground effort, which is going into court, and somebody's a victim of harassment, and we're going in for them where no attorney would have talked to this person. They would just shy away. They wouldn't take the case. Flyers that we've made, and that's the work. It's a variety of things we're doing. And the latest thing that's exciting is we have Denise Rosado, which an attorney from who's barred in Arizona, and she has her own struggle. And yet at the same time, she's saying that she's going to come out and help these people. And we have already 2 matters that we've handled. And one of them is a person who is working for a large government entity agency. And she was basically getting mobbed at work. And she'd have people standing right around her desk saying, oh, her most intimate thoughts, prattling on about sexual innuendo with her, abusing her at work. And this is a major agency within the United States government. And basically, as a result of her reporting the harassment, she was scheduled for a mental evaluation. And you're like, wait a minute, shouldn't the perpetrators be scheduled for that mental evaluation, not the victim? But this is how these things are dealt with. And so we got a call, or no, it was an email. We got it on a Saturday. And we jumped into action immediately on this because it was obvious that by the time that mental evaluation took place, you would probably be either jobless or in a temporary commitment, an involuntary hold, because there was a V2K component to her harassment, which is a known and recognized technology known as the Frey auditory effect. Various flavors of this spoken about at length in journals, listed as a U.S. Army weapon. This is old hat. But the psychology aspect of things says, oh, if you hear voices, you're crazy. So as soon as you report V2K, they come out with a rubber suit, right? To get you in that. So we jumped into action. We set up a plan. We got her a real counselor to speak of. And she was able to go in on Monday. This is 2 days later. And stand her ground and say, oh, really? Because they told her it was mandatory. She was required to undergo this psychiatric screening, which is ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
But they didn't put it in writing, mind you.
Yes.
They just verbally told her, oh, you have to do this or this can happen, which I was like, no. If they're going to do that, then you want to get that in writing, because then they'll turn around and say, well, we never said that.
Yes. That's a brilliant piece of, information that other people would be very interested to hear about as well. That, nobody can come and intimidate you and say, you've got to do this, you've got to submit yourself to a mental health assessment, right? It's got to be in writing, is what you're saying.
Right, exactly, because I think then if you do go in voluntarily, even though it's not, they're pretty much threatening you, but then you have a cause of action, they'll turn around and say, well, this wasn't mandatory. When did we say that? Is there anything that can prove it? And they're going to say your word against mine. So I was like, no. So we did that. And we were so thankful, because then we talked to her, a week later, totally different person. Ray, tell Ramola and everybody how she was.
Denise is spot on. The confidence to assert her right to privacy. This is a medical right to privacy. Everyone has. Nobody can say, well, you're required to go to a psychiatric evaluation now. That's outrageous. This is the United States of America we're talking about. They were just trying to make a ruse out of it and have her go in, and then they would say she wanted it. It was her consent. So the moment she stood her ground, they backed off and said, oh, no, that was purely, a voluntary thing. It's
a suggestion.
Wow.
Forget about the psychiatric thing. Don't worry, it's cool. And then we also talked with Devanshi shortly thereafter, and she was confident. She was working on an anti-V2K audio program to negate some of the effects of it that she's putting up on YouTube. She's sharing links with us about her work. So it was night and day from a person that's really headed for an abyss of joblessness and despair from somebody who's now turning into an activist and who is pressing her rights forward to fix the problem. So yeah, we did that from a Saturday email that we got to Sunday. We did all of that, and his work and effort and her confidence turned it all around. So that's just one example.
That's amazing. And frankly, that, I would love to hear more about this, because this sounds like something that you sort of, one, you were both very responsive and very vigilant. You answered the phone, you responded, which is more than can be said for many attorneys, right? And you understood the gravity of the situation, that she was likely to lose her job or have this permanent stigma against her name.
Some kind of psychiatric eval, being diagnosed as paranoid, God knows what else, because that's the label they like to tag people with if it's something they don't understand. Or even people that are part of the mobbing will still label you as paranoid, even though they're part of it, because they want to make it seem like you're the one that's losing your marbles instead of them being the terrorist.
And that's their intention, right? I mean, this is the invidiousness of this program, where people are being targeted and harassed and then being wrongfully labeled as paranoid and schizophrenic, which is a way of, covering up the crime and denying the crime.
Right.
And, it's kind of putting themselves in the clear at the same time as totally burying the victim.
Well, that's the whole thing, is nobody wants to believe somebody who's crazy. But the idea that somebody can be labeled crazy by some untrained bunch of rumors is completely against their rights and constitutional rights in this country. And I've seen cases where there is a dedicated rumor campaign where they'll make a flyer that says, so-and-so looks like they're crazy, and they'll distribute this. Now, they always put in that there is also a threat to safety or a potential violence, so that nobody wants to talk to you, because they're like, okay, well, she's crazy and violent, so there's no way to clear your name because nobody wants to talk to you. And I've gotten those flyers from these actions that the perpetrators take.
Really?
Yes, I posted them on my website, because one of those guys was the one that I got a restraining order on, and we're actually going to go after his money too if he keeps this up. But the idea is, you can't do that. People have to be able to exercise their judgment and realize how this is done. It's those rumor campaigns that you described, Romola, along with this persistent mobbing and stalking, will silence people and paralyze them into fear. And, we did another recent case that I'd love to share with you. And this is on a case where this young man, he's an IT person, hardworking, and he's been mobbed. And basically, we did not know him when he got this whole mental health angle added to his life. But he literally, by one of these ruses, one of these games that they play, managed to get him wrapped up into something like that. And he was unable to defend himself. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what, the words to use to say, wait a minute, I have a right to privacy. If I want counseling, I'll get my own. He didn't know how to fight it. So he got wrapped up in a situation like that. But he came to us much, much later, because now he's in the rumor campaign where everybody turns to you like you're the worst criminal, like you've done something horribly wrong, and you don't know what's going on. You're like, why are they looking at me that way? And so what's happening to him is they're going to churches, they're going to potential employers, making up rumors. And so what I told him is, why don't we try this? Let's nip this in the bud. Let's literally preempt these guys from starting these rumor campaigns by going ahead of the curve. And so what we did, me and Denise here, we went and talked to him for a while, and we examined his record, and we examined what he's doing, and we determined that he is an advocate for victims of crime, that he is exercising his free speech and free petition rights. And so therefore, he's entitled to the protection of the federal constitutional rights that we have. That can be done in court, in federal court, by Denise or I, in any state in this country, through a pro hac vice admission. And that means that we have the power to reach into those jurisdictions where they're getting screwed with and bring federal actions to protect their rights. And so we wrote a letter. Yes, that's exactly right. We wrote a letter for him advising people that he is an advocate, that he is suffering repercussions, and that as a result, we stand by him. we are basically on his side and we'll be taking action if things don't change. So me and Denise just did that, and I want to announce that for listeners of your program, because you've been doing great work. I've seen your podcast, and I've seen
Thank you.
some of your story, but obviously not all of it. I'm sure you've got a lot more going on than you don't talk about, but I can see the struggle that you've waged to help people. And so for any listener that's listening now, me and Denise, if you donate $99 to Denise's GoFundMe campaign, we will both look at your situation. 2 lawyers will examine the facts of your case and issue a rights protection letter like we just did in that other case. That was just this past week. So that's what I want to offer to people. And Denise, do you want to give your blog or your GoFundMe?
Yeah. Well, I don't know the GoFundMe name because it's a big link, but it's on my blog, which is youradvocateforjustice.com. Yes. And I encourage everybody that's interested to go and read the blog. There's some information on there that you might find interesting, and then go and do independent research if you're called to it. I feel like it's a big and important message to get out. And we're doing, we're going to do even, I feel a little bit like a pioneer in that I've got quite a few defendants, including government agencies, other folks, and it's going to be a gargantuan task, and that's why we need funding. But Ray is helping me, and I'm so thankful to Ray for his support. And I think we're going to go on to do bigger and better things. And this is a gargantuan matter, but at the same time, we are simultaneously here to help other people in their matters, legal roles as well.
Absolutely wonderful, Denise. So it's fabulous that you both are working together. So basically, by funding Denise's work, which is also your work, it sounds like, Ray, you are inviting other people who are targeted to come forward and get counseling and advice and help from you, right, as a legal team.
Yeah, so what will happen is Denise is volunteering for the legal co-op, and when people donate to her, the arrangement that I'm making with Denise is that we will both work on these projects together, and you're creating community, you're making allies, friends. It's like, well, would you rather fund HBO or would you rather maybe help people in the community that are helping you, like your efforts here, Romola, and longstanding efforts, or attorneys that are stepping up? And frankly, I don't know that many attorneys that step up in this community. It's been a real dearth of, right?
We can count them on our fingers. Right?
And this is something that Denise came forward, I believe, as a result of noticing that there's momentum in this movement. And I have word from other attorneys in other states. This is not just us, but there's people who've been attacked in their profession. People who are shy, they're afraid, they don't know who to reach out to, what to do. And what we're offering is the start. We're offering that door, open up. And I've got volunteer law students from New Jersey, for example. Great guy, young, enthusiastic, ready, and on point with everything he's given me. I don't think he ever would have come out if we hadn't been doing podcasts and reaching out to the community like this. So that latest effort with the letter means that letter gets written co-signed by me and Denise, and that's a legal rights letter. Basically, that tells people, better not, screw around with this person too much, because there's already 2 attorneys who have a practice that specializes on this kind of thing and are ready to stand up for this person. It might cost them their house. It might cost them that little pretty dime that they get from the whatever program they're getting funded by. And so they might think twice.
Absolutely.
Right, Denise?
Yeah, and what I wanted to say is this is very new to me. And if what I experienced had not happened to me personally, and I heard this from somebody else, I would think they were crazy, honestly. But because it's happened to me, I'm like, I cannot be the only one that this is happening to. This must be happening more than I could ever imagine. And it actually does break my heart, because as I'm becoming more aware and educated in what people in the community are experiencing, it just baffles and mind-boggling to me. My heart goes out to the community, and even still some of the things that I hear are so unbelievable to me. it's not that I don't believe it, it's that it's hard for me to wrap my mind around it, because when you're a decent person that doesn't go out trying to violate people's rights and cause harm, you don't think that people are out there to get people for like no reason, or for sport, or because they said something that is threatening somebody else, or their perceived threats. So this is a, a work in progress. I'm learning as I go. I'm being educated like a fast track, and it breaks my heart, and I want to do as much as possible for people. And going back to the example where we helped the young lady who was working for the government 2 weeks ago, I think it was now, a week and a half ago, and the transformation that we saw in her just in a week. She went from being extremely anxious and scared, and they're gonna lock me up or, you know, get me institutionalized, to she's working on these beats, megahertz, to like binaural beats, to kind of help you in stay in a nice calm state of mind. And she's come so like a 180 transformation in just a short time, and that to me makes me extremely happy and proud that I was part, you know, that I helped that person. And I would love to do that for more people. In addition to being an attorney and helping to write these letters with Ray, I'm also a life coach. So if anyone is interested in any of those services, hit me up.
Wonderful. I mean, honestly, what you both are doing is invaluable, I think, because as you said, Ray, there are very few attorneys who've come forward in the past. Everybody has been, you know, just sort of shunning those who are targeted, those who are being harassed, and those who are reporting this kind of extraordinary neurotech invasion, as this young woman has reported. And, you know, I certainly get a lot of reports, and I guess, Denise, you are also getting more reports now. And Ray, you mentioned very large numbers of people writing to you and contacting you, right? Would you have a sense of an estimate in terms of how many people you think in the world, or even in the US, that are currently being targeted and harassed and stalked in this way?
Well, just looking at the statistics, and I did a video on this as a launching for the legal co-op, because I grasped the magnitude of the problem by looking at the FBI's supplemental victim statistical survey that they did. And this was 2007. But what's fascinating about that is that we know that stalking is an underreported crime. It's proven. It's like I forget the exact proportion, but it may be 50 or 30% or somewhere in between that do not talk about it, because it's one of these fear things. So they just don't want to rattle the cage, and they're wondering why people are acting towards them. So they don't want to publicize the problem. They're afraid they might be ostracized completely. So the underreporting rate is phenomenal. And there's also problems understanding what is going on. So a lot of people are shunted into a mental health issue. And so the numbers were like 3 million nationwide. And I had calculated at one point to an exact a multiplier that I figured this is what's happening, because the underreporting, they 18-year and under crowd, they call that bullying, but it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing that's happening to under an 18 individual. They get mobbed, harassed, stalked, persecuted. They have V2K. And those people are not even included in the original survey. So you can easily see how those numbers will mushroom and become a lot larger. So my estimates were that there were millions upon millions of people stalked by multiple perpetrators that they did not know. In other words, no apparent cause. Persistent, ongoing, multiple perpetrator stalking is in the millions now in the United States. And so, you know, I talked to a young CPA who was probably going to become an officer in this non-profit entity. And that young CPA was the subject of a suicide campaign in her life when she was a teenager at high school. And they did the whole thing, the V2Ks, they did the harassment, mobbing, shaming, the whole thing that they did to Audrey Pott from Saratoga, California. You don't know if you remember that case, where they literally pursue these teenagers. And they pursue these teenagers until death, until suicide. This is the kind of cult persecution that takes place. And people, for some reason, either turn their heads away or just let it happen because they figure it's just smoke, there must be fire. You know, the reality is that these people are being victimized in vast, vast numbers. So my CPA survived. You know, I call her my CPA. She's no more mine than than anything else, but she's on the side of this nonprofit. And I'm proud of her for having survived it, you see. And that's what I mentioned. The under an 18 crowd isn't counted. So think about how many more millions of people are enduring this. So my estimates are, probably somewhere like 4 million in the US at a very low number. That's what I think.
And therefore, many tens of millions probably worldwide, is what you're
Absolutely.
suggesting,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And you also suggest that this is possibly cultic or satanic kind of persecution. I mean, honestly, we know the kinds of horrific harassment and persecution people are reporting. It does sound satanic, right? It sounds kind of anti-human. It sounds inhumane. It sounds barbaric. It's cruelty, it's torture. You know, many people are reporting constant 24/7 V2K abuse in their heads. And a lot of people are reporting also being hit with microwave weapons or milliwave weapons, some kind of weapons that are physically hitting their bodies with radiation, whether it's radiation pulses or damage to their organs and so forth. And as you know, this is a subject I've been covering for a long time, as you noted, Ray. And so I am aware of what's going on to some extent. And, the reports continue to pour in. There are new people who contact me. Do you have that experience as well?
Oh, yeah. We have those two people were brand new cases, one at a very early stage of reporting that Denise participated in. It's ongoing, it is growing. Gunderson's affidavit that you're familiar with identified what he said was sort of a control center where cults of various types are basically run to run these persecution campaigns against people. And I am aware of what is basically called voyeuristic networks, which is a type of TV that instead of watching Punk'd or Dexter, people will tune in to watch others suffer. And this includes some of the most despicable things you can imagine, from child abuse to murder. And this was recently identified by the UN investigator Niels Milser on his report on cyber torture. And he talked about it with some urgency because he said, this is happening. He said it's an increasing problem. And I have to agree completely. This is not going away. The programs are terminal in nature and they must be addressed with action. That's how I feel about it.
Now, as you probably also know, I mean, this is something I have been researching for a while, and I've been looking into how, the local government may be involved, or militaries may be involved, intelligence agencies may be involved in terms of weapons testing of these, covert stealth weapons, these new electronic weapons, concealed monitoring weapons, etc. And, also the other kinds of very dark experimentation regarding in conjunction with artificial intelligence and neuroscience, weaponized neuroscience that's going on. Have you looked into that at all, and what is your thinking on that?
Well, Romola, I think you have a great insight into all of this. I've seen some of your past videos. So what I'll pitch in is this. Years ago, we ran into this problem during the MK Ultra era.
Yes.
And I know you're familiar with that history, and it was a sordid history. It was despicable. University upon university, corporation after corporation, scientists, doctor, heads of departments, reputable people engaged in the most despicable things against children, unwitting victims, drugs, the most horrible stuff you can imagine. And there was a hearing on it, and they said they stopped it. And guess what? Human nature, we haven't yet become angels, so it always will recur. What's that, Denise?
I said we're getting there.
Yeah, that's right. We're sort of forging a new path, right?
We're doing something right, I hope. And so that is happening again. The study of the mind. MK Ultra was sold to Congress as a way to study the ecology of the mind and how to help people. And we saw the wreckage, the trail of victims that it left behind, when that kind of control is given to people over others. And so we know this is wrong. We know we shouldn't do it. And here they are studying the brain again under the Brain Initiative, which is supposed to be a $500 million, or that's billion with a B. I think it's a $500
billion, I think.
Billion, yes. And that is going on right now with all of the educational institutions. And the seed money for this is military. So we know it's DARPA fund that started the Brain Initiative. We know it's a weapon. We know they're doing these things for a weapon because it's the Defense Research Projects Agency that seeded the whole thing. They were the first grantor. And so it's a weapon. It's what it is. It's not really there to cure this or that. This is a weapon. And when it gets researched, it hurts people. It victimizes people. And we're in the pitch and throes of that again right now. Thank you to all the scientists who do good work. And unfortunately, it brings in all this panoply of abuse and disgrace that we have seen before. Well, we're seeing it again.
Yeah.
Would you say that MK Ultra actually never stopped? It just went underground?
Well, yeah. What?
You know, that's what Alex Constantine says, you know, and he's done all these studies of cults and so forth. He said it also entered the cults, you know, so this comes back to our conversation on cultic persecution. So it seems like there's a real connection between the intelligence agencies, you know, some of them in particular, right? I think we know which ones, the one in particular associated with MK Ultra, and the cults, and, you know, and the military, although the DOD and CIA at this point in time are working very closely together. Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, I have some story to share on that. Where I'm at, not far away from here, people are always wondering, how does this matter to everyday people? Like, you know, the CIA, big deal, and you know, the NSA, whatever. It sounds like it's really removed from our everyday experience. But just up the road from where I'm at, they had several brothels that were run by the CIA, where they were literally the unfortunate customers would go in and they would get MK Ultra experiments as a sort of gratuity for going in there. And they got drugged, LSD. They had the likes of Sidney Gottlieb going in and running his entertainment there. He was a toxicologist, basically a master poisoner, you know about him. And, you know, it's like they will, if people are given this kind of control and this kind of runaway cruelty and power, it will never stop. Nobody will ever stop from researching how to enslave others. It's too profitable. They can unhinge their opponents, take over a business, get revenge on their spouses or whoever it may be, their rivals, by simply implanting them and destroying that person's psyche. They'll do it. There's no bruises left. The medical science is woefully inadequate. Psychology is unaware. And police are still wondering, you know, what is that all, you know, they don't have the training. So they're also behind the eight ball. It's up to the courts to define the new level of protection, the legislature to start taking up some of these cases and looking at the patterns so that there can be legislative action on this, legislative action. And so it's really, I believe, up to people like yourself, journalists, and people who are going to step up and go front and center. And that's me and Denise and a few lawyers as well, because we just had a meeting. Denise, you were there. Why don't you tell a little bit about this roundtable we just went to with Anne Marie?
Oh, the roundtable. Oh, talking about class action, right? Lost my train of thought for a minute. But I just wanted to say, before we get into that, I did want to say that, you know, there are a lot of us stepping up that are attorneys and other advocates like yourself, Romola, journalists, and other members in the community. But there's a lot that the community members, the actual survivors, can do, like coming together and be supportive. I think it's really important for us to band together. I really believe that we are stronger in numbers. So if we have the support, and yeah, that might be $5 a month or whatever, or it could be just your energy. Ray and I, and you know, maybe this is corny or not your thing, and that's okay, but we did a little meditation, if you want to call it, before we entered this Zoom conference, because we wanted to raise our energy. Because when you raise your vibrations, I think we can protect ourselves more. And then if you have more people doing the same thing and coming together and being supportive of each other, and I think that can help big time, because I think one of our greatest tools is our mind. And if you make your mind stronger and powerful, then it's harder for them to get to you. I know it's not the, you know, it's not the answer for everything, but it helps. And the more people get together and unite and put those positive energies together, and we'll feel it and you'll feel it. And I think it helps us. But anyway, so yes, the community getting together stronger in numbers. But then this roundtable with Derek and Anne Marie, we did talk about, well, Anne Marie was the one that talked about the class actions and you know, needing expert witnesses and investigators, and there has to be similarities between the defendants and against the plaintiffs. So, I mean, I'm sorry, the other way around. The plaintiffs against the defendants. And so, Ray, you continue on with that one.
Yeah, this was just one of those things, Romola, that is happening right now. That this is just, you know, 2 weeks ago or whatever, and these are attorneys that are not, they're not basically publicizing their role in the situation, but they're interested. They want to know what can be done to stem the tide and correct this problem. And so, you know, we had a great roundtable with Anne Marie from Arizona. You probably have heard of her.
I do know her, yeah.
Right, there you go. So I was like, you know, this is great. Let's talk about this, because the class action angle is one that has been misused in the past, where people say, oh, you can join this class action lawsuit, but they don't have a class action lawsuit going, or they don't have a lawyer, or it's just kind of like this information gathering effort, which is fine in one way. But in another, people need to be understanding that just because somebody says they're collecting information doesn't mean that it's going to go to somebody that can do anything with it. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is to change that and get some parameters down for what could happen. How could we even talk about this? How can we start dealing with the problem tangibly and put some effort, legal effort behind it, so that it's not just another survey that been going on for, I think I saw one supposed class action, which I think was, you know, probably not real, unfortunately. And it was just somebody collecting paperwork and information from many TIs for years, and then doing nothing with it. And it's so disappointing to me, because, you know, when I see that, I'm like, wow, these people had their hopes pinned on getting that happen, and it did not. So, you know, we aim to change that by being realistic. You know, like my website is already giving people some pointers on what to do and what not to do in certain situations. It's ground level work, and the class action is no exception. So that was with Anne Marie and Derek and Denise. That will be coming out hopefully sometime this week or maybe next. I don't know. But Derek's calling that his, I guess, PAX International TV or something. I don't know.
Oh, I see. You recorded a podcast for him. I see. Okay.
Right, a video thing, yeah. So that's what we did for that, but we did that openly, because it's like now people are stepping up on video, openly talking about these things. We have a certain level of momentum, and we need that support that enables us to keep going. I mean, this little effort here, go to the website, read through all the things that have been done. That's under $1,000 a month of budget that has been taken to do that. And I don't know where you could hire 2 lawyers to jump in on a Saturday for $100 to stand up for you, to save your job, you know, when the chips are down and the odds are grim. I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And like I said, I've been around for like 20 years. So I love what I'm doing. I love this, the practice that is going, it's as hard. And there's a lot going on all the time, but this is something where you feel in your heart you're doing something right. You're doing the right thing. And that's how I feel about it. I know you've been around the trenches a long time too.
Yes, yes, I have. And I think that's tremendous, Ray, because literally it is a public service that you are doing. I guess you'd probably be paid for the cost of paper or something like that. But more than that, it's more important to actually help people and help our communities, right? And help our society because what's going on is so wrong. And if scientists are involved, which of course it seems they are, right? If academics are involved, if high officials in government and military and the law enforcement departments are involved, then it's shameful, and they need to know that it's shameful. They need to turn away from this kind of blatant exploitation and usage and persecution of people because it's literally treating people as so much fodder, as guinea pigs, right, who are disposable and dispensable. So I think what you are doing is tremendous, and it's wonderful that you both are doing it. I'm sorry that Denise seems to have dropped out of the conversation. I think that was unintended. Oh, I see
Oh
she's
yeah,
here once again as an attendee. Can she hear us?
I don't know.
Yes,
There's okay.
Oh, there you are.
yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot of tech issues. I'm sorry. I'm getting set up with my office, and I didn't get a camera for my desktop, so I was using my laptop, and it ran out of battery, and so I joined in with my phone right now. So I'm so sorry that happened. I'm gonna try to get in a different way and be more prepared next time.
Okay, just to let you know, your phone number is showing on the screen, so you may want
Oh,
to remove that and, rename with your name. I can't do it from here, or I would do it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me. Yes. Okay. I'll be back.
Okay.
Romola, that comment you made about how there is participation in law enforcement and the science and the highest levels, you're 100% right. It does happen. There's nothing immune from bad apples. There's nothing immune from corruption. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Those are Lord Acton's famous words. They're true today as they were then. There's always going to be some corruption. And, I've got, for example, one individual that I'm helping, and I'm looking at a file review with her. I was able to find a sheet of paper that says that she is a target of that agency and an active target of that agency since a particular date. And it says in black and white. There she is.
There you are.
Hey. And so that's it. I found that in her documentation. She is a target of that agency.
Hi.
But what happens when people are conceived as targets is that the bureaucratic inertia takes over, and they're going to bring that person down. There's no, how are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, we don't hit our targets. No, every single law enforcement culture says you get your man, you get your suspect, you close the case, you get your target. So the moment a person's labeled as a target, it's basically game over. They're going to be harassed. They're going to be persecuted. Every single snitch in town is going to be mustered to go up and entrap and provoke that person. And that culture is wrong. That speaks to what is watch listing. Why is watch listing such a problem? Well, it doesn't take much to get on a watch list nowadays. I have right on my blog another post that describes what happened to 4 people who didn't have a criminal record, but the FBI and maybe, scrap the FBI, let me just say some law enforcement agency thought that they would make good snitches. They wanted snitches, they wanted labor, they wanted people to work for them. So how do you recruit them when
As
they,
informants, right?
right, they wanted them as informants. So then instead of, approaching them with a proposal, like we would like you to become a snitch, we propose to pay you, $5,000 a month. They said, no, just put them on the watch list, and then they'll be highly motivated to become informants.
Oh my
That
God.
was one of the most despicable reasons.
Terrible.
Yes, it was absolutely just despicable. And that case is in front of the Supreme Court right now. It's called Tanzan versus Tanvir, and it's on my blog. What they did, why they watch listed him, and why it's wrong. And that's the kind of thing that we need. We need advocacy and support for the lawyers that are fighting that case, for the people that are talking about these things, because the more light we can bring onto the issue, the less likely it is to recur. That's how I feel.
And that sounds like it's something of a regular protocol for the FBI or whichever law enforcement agency we want to consider this to be, to to go around into the community and just sort of put people on a watch list, consider them suspects.
Yeah, it's interesting how you have the actual terrorists calling victims or survivors, as I like to call us, terrorists, and we've done nothing wrong, have never violated anybody's rights, clean records, wouldn't harm a fly. Yet these people that are mobbing us and stalking and harassing, assaulting physically, the actual terrorists are actually getting away with labeling innocent people as terrorists and further violating our civil rights and basic human rights. And yeah, there has to be an end to it, and we're working on that.
Would you say this is an overreaching of both their powers and also their reading of such, permissive laws like the Patriot Act, for instance?
Yeah, I do.
Absolutely. It's a complete, because, and actually I read, I heard this on one of your older podcasts, Romola. I think you were interviewing someone called, and I might mess up the name, Eric Clarkson or something like that. And they were talking about how there are some active cases and there's no due process. How do you put someone on a watch list and all you have is somebody's word? Somebody said this person is a threat. Somebody said this person is not in their right frame. You should put them on this watch list.
On hearsay, right? On hearsay.
Yes, absolutely. There is absolutely no due process. It's unconstitutional and it shouldn't be happening, right?
Yeah, that goes back to our blacklisting that we had during a few decades ago. It wasn't even that long ago. And they were blacklisting people for being union organizers. And
the McCarthy era in the 50s, you mean?
Yes, and they were ruined. People that were blacklisted were economically ruined. There's the movie Trumbo. I always refer people to that because it's very sympathetic.
What is the name of the movie?
Trumbo, Trumbo, Trumbo. It's like Dumbo, but with a TR instead. So Trumbo. And well, yeah. But he was the number one screenwriter in Hollywood. He was number one. He had great credits to him, fantastic stories, great work. And then he decided to start helping the unions that were starting to form around Hollywood at the time. And guess what? He was blacklisted. And the movie will show you what happened to his life. No more work coming in. Harassment. I mean, literally almost bankrupted. And, I'm not going to spoil the end of the movie, but okay, maybe I will, because I don't know if people are going to watch it. But I'll say this. He fled to Mexico. He fled. The movie doesn't say this, but his story is that he fled to Mexico. And somebody finally stood up for this person. And it was a movie star, Kirk Douglas.
Oh, wow.
Stood up. Yes, I know it sounds weird because he's kind of like a hero in the movies, but in real life, he did this and at great risk to his own career, said, this is wrong. We're not going to let this happen. We're going to use, this person's good. His work is good. And guess what? I won't tell you how the movie ends, but it is worthy of a rent on Amazon. Trumbo, Trumbo.
I'll definitely watch it. It sounds really interesting because, we have people talking about that today. People who've been blacklisted from the careers, even from Hollywood. As you know, we all know the case of Stephen Shellen, right? He's been on my show a few times talking about
What's the last name?
Stephen Schellenberger or Shellen.
Okay.
Stephen Shellen.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you
read,
has
a movie out, by the way.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
cool.
It's called The Spark, and it's all about targeting and harassment. So that his movie is worth watching and sharing with everybody, and it's very current as well.
Great.
And I think if you read my complaint at the very end, you'll see some other causes of action that include blackballing, and this is targeting. Someone's stalking people and hacking. How are they finding this information where you are and where you're seeking employment and then trying to thwart all of those opportunities? They want people to become destitute so that you can't survive, so that you can't become self-sufficient, so that you stop fighting, so that you stop speaking. And we have to just rise above that. It's hard. Not everybody makes it, and that's all the more reason why I feel like it's important for me to put myself out there, regardless of ridicule or whatever people want to say. I know this happened to me, and if it's happening to me, it's happened to other people, and we have to take a stand. At some point, people have to say enough is enough, and I'm so grateful that I'm connecting with like-minded people that are working towards this issue and improving matters. But that is their end game. They want us to stop fighting, to stop speaking, to stop being free thinkers, and to continue to be enslaved. And we're not slaves. We are gods and goddesses, kings and queens, and we can reclaim that. It's not overnight, but little by little, we'll get there.
Very eloquently put. Thank you, Denise. Absolutely. That is exactly the reason I think many of us are standing up and speaking out and standing together, despite everything that's thrown at us in many different ways, including precisely what you're talking about, the blackballing, blacklisting, smearing, and so on. I wanted to ask, though, because you both are attorneys and you're working now with a very positive attitude, what is your thinking and looking ahead to, what are the chances, do you think, that the court system will rally around and be open to hearing cases like this and sort of ruling favorably in cases like this?
Well, I'm just going to pull back to history on this, because I usually tend to think, history is kind of cyclical in a way, and that people's patterns of behavior recur. So this reminds me of the era of segregation. And, back then they said, in the South, Black people are going to be a subclass. They have no real rights. And we can do anything that they wanted. They could do anything they wanted to a Black person. And so they were not allowed to be on the sidewalk where the white person was walking. The buses could sit to the back and all that. And this was a way of life. This defined their economy as well, because all the facilities for Black people were completely subpar. So this was an entire civilizational kind of shift. And it happened as a result of a legal effort. There was one lawyer who started to drive around those towns in the South at great risk to himself, one town to the other. And I think he topped up at something like 250,000 miles driving. That, the South isn't 250,000 miles, so he must have zigzagged through all these little towns and talked to all these people. And part of it was building the courage and the community, trying to get people to say, I will not, this stops now. I will not permit this to be done to me anymore. I have a voice, I have a name, I am a citizen. I will stand up for my rights. And he did this all throughout the South. And, there was his life was threatened. There was great violence, great resistance. And yet, in the end, that lawyer prevailed in his case. And of course, there were many other lawyers, and he was a note in a symphony of change, a one person in what ended up being thousands of people having a consciousness and refusing to let that continue, that grave injustice. And well, his name was Thurgood Marshall, and he became a U.S. Supreme Court justice. Yes.
Wow.
So that's what I call back on when I think about this. Is they're repressing a class of people who they have labeled, for whatever number of reasons, conveniently as their toys. And we can't let that happen. We are equal under the law. We have our rights. And if it's ever exposed what's being done, it will be stopped. And so it was done then, and so it should be now.
Absolutely. So you base your hope on precisely that we've come to a time in history where a change has to occur, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just wanted to focus a little bit on your use of the term label, because you really laid out just now a few minutes ago the importance of the significance of labeling people targets, because once people are labeled targets, it's such a military word, right? It's military law enforcement word, kind of military more than law enforcement, I think. Once somebody is a target, they become sort of open for target practice, apparently, by one and all.
Mm-hmm. Right. And personally, I have mentioned this to Ray before. I personally don't like to be called a targeted individual because I wasn't born with a target. I don't have a target on my back. I feel like people became interested in me because I spoke the truth and it caused certain liabilities. Just to give a little bit of background about my case, after I left the federal government and I started to attend law school in Phoenix, Arizona, myself and a slew of other students realized that we were receiving a subpar education. So we went with our concerns to administration, who felt very threatened by us because now they're thinking, oh my gosh, liability, or well, another one of their schools had suffered and closed down. And so they were, I think, scared about that. And we became persons of interest and
Oh
they
my goodness.
pursued us and retaliated us. And fast forward, vindication occurred and that school shuttered. However, the targeting, the harassment, the retaliation never did. And it's hard for me to understand that, but yes, I do think it's important to be careful with labels. And I don't know how you get around that, but I don't like to call myself a target. I'm more of a warrior, a survivor, an advocate for justice because of what I have been through. Now I can help other people, and that's my hope. But yeah, we should be mindful about terms because everything has a frequency. And you know, if you're calling yourself a target, maybe you feel fearful or you feel anxious. But if for me, I like to turn it around and I say, well, I was afforded this opportunity so that maybe I can be of service to other people moving forward. And so sometimes the curse can be a blessing as well. And so if I can help one person that has experienced what I've been experiencing or worse, then I feel like I've done my job and fulfilled my mission on this planet. So that's my goal.
And you have some wonderful positive terms to counter that: warrior, an
Oh,
advocate for justice, so
yes,
forth. I
thank
know
you.
survivor is often used, but more than survivor, you are a warrior
Hmm.
and, a public speaker and an advocate. And, as I think we all are over here on this panel. And,
Hmm.
that in a sense is a very positive way of moving forward.
Absolutely.
This term targeted individual, as many people, all of us have looked at it and gone, what on earth, and why should we label ourselves thus?
Yes.
Because it's a label from the outside. Those who
Hmm.
are targeting others are daring to call these people targets and targeted
Hmm.
individuals, etc. And by the way, going back to what we started this conversation with, the term targeted individual has unfortunately been very closely associated with paranoia, paranoid schizophrenia, schizoid disorder, etc., through that
Right.
kind of mental health fraud that you were just talking about,
Hmm.
where people wrongfully
Hmm.
bring in the mental health
Hmm.
cops and
Right.
the psychiatrists and start labeling people wrongfully. So
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons why the word itself becomes so weighty, the targeted
Exactly.
individual term. But, fighting against that and removing that stigma is a very different ballgame altogether. And you guys are doing it.
Absolutely. Yes.
You just pinpointed something critical there. Right in this town, again, I'm in the Bay Area. There are companies that now basically rate people. And
Mhm.
you think, well, we have a credit rating, so that's all there is. But there's a rating for risk that they are tending to
Mm.
attach to every person. And that rating takes into account all sorts of bunk. And I mean, just kind of scuttlebutt, Facebook postings, rumors, associative terms, a whole bunch of junk, really, that you would think nobody would ever use all this stuff to make any decision because you don't know where it comes from, you don't know how current it is, you don't know what consequences that would have. So you would never do it in a court of law, this is what we're about in this country. We're a country of laws, not of men or women. We're a country of laws. And so then they do this in this database. They call it an algorithm. And that in companies right here doing that kind of labeling of people, and they'll go in, and when they enter that house, the police, they get a call, usually, oh, there's something going on at that house. And it's usually a fake and an anonymous report. See, cops will go in guns drawn because there's danger, you see. And so
there's a word for that. It's called swatting.
yes, swatting, exactly. And now it's not
Wow.
swatting by software. You get swatted by this algorithm that gets triggered by a bunch of anonymous reports that nobody can verify. And that's another one of those things that I think is an outrage. It's not even a watch list. It's an algorithm score that's developed right here in this town. And they have run into some resistance. And this is one of the things that I talk about to say, oh, wait a minute. You know, why can't we just deal with the situations as they arise instead of trying to read a whole bunch of bunk reports and snitches that get paid for their lies and unreliable information all cobbled up into this, you know, software. That's just another way of removing responsibility from the people, you know, who are making the reports. And there's all kinds of reasons. They'll be, you know, revenge minded, or their genetic programs are trying to stamp out their rivals or whatever, or purify the race. We've had these things in this country before. We know these things exist. So why on God's green earth would we allow people to spew all kinds of nonsense into a computer to spit out something that says that when you approach this person, have your gun ready? You know, it's just wrong. So that's one of the angles that I want to explore, is dealing with that particular problem that we have here, which is an algorithm judgment, basically, that gets made.
And I would suggest that if it's, you know, prevalent in the Bay Area, it's probably in use elsewhere in the country, probably all over the country, right? Some kind of artificial intelligence software that
Absolutely.
runs of algorithms.
There was a scandal in New Orleans because, you know, this is one of the, it's insidious. It's a lot of money. Basically, the data gets shared. And marketers and local business people love nothing more than to find out everything about you, because then they know exactly when you're buying a car and how much money you're going to buy it for, how much you make, what money do you spend. They can control purchasing. They can control decisions. And, you know, Henry Ford is famous for saying people can have any car color they want so long as it's black. They would like nothing more, right, than to sell us whatever junk they have when they want to sell it to us. And information sharing allows them to do a lot of that. So there has been scandals where the system was implemented and nobody in City Hall, none of the council people, none of the mayor knew anything about it. It would just snuck in into some kind of, you know, information sharing agreement, Fusion Center, you know, this really works, it's cool, it'll really help you. And all of a sudden the entire major metropolitan area was now tagged and scored and part of this AI system to label them. And nobody in City Hall knew. So this was reported on not that long ago, where people went up to us and said, so how did you feel about implementing this artificial intelligence, you know, scoring system for people? And they were like, we don't know anything about that. What is that? They were clueless. So it's an insidious program. It's working its way into major metropolitan areas all over the country. And there's just been some scandal and some rejection of it, but it's just starting now where the backlash is occurring. That's one of the projects that I'm going to try to work on some more, is letting people know that you can't let this happen. It's just another way to get revenge and take the corner lot away from somebody you don't like. And it's wrong. It's wrong. If we're going to have consequences on Americans, we're entitled to due process of law. We're entitled to hear and cross-examine our accuser and see their evidence. Those are our rights.
Due process, yep.
Absolutely. So we're not giving that up to some computer. Forget it. Computers just do whatever people tell them. You know, people usually with a lot of money, like Bill Gates. I don't want him ruining anything.
Yeah. You know, just listening to you both, it sounds like you're amassing a lot of information, and, you know, you're working in that realm where really law enforcement should sort of sit up and take notice of what is going on, because they need to be aware that there is pushback from the community, right? Do you envision at some time creating reports perhaps that would be useful for people like the FBI and law enforcement?
Yeah, I think that's something, Ray, we could work on that. I mean, we have so many ideas, and I've agreed to be part of Ray's legal co-op. And I have to make a little joke. And Ray, I always do this anyway. Ray knows that I always call it, well, at least with Ray, I always call it the legal coop, because it's COOP.
Right.
He's like, I have to put a dash in there. But anyway.
Never live that down, will
Well,
I?
online it's probably hard to sort of change that. But I thought it was that.
I know. And so it's always like an inside joke. It just makes, I like to use humor. As much as I've been through, I really think it's important to enjoy yourself as much as possible. And sometimes it means forcing yourself to do something that maybe you wouldn't do. I'll watch comedies. I'll call a friend and we'll just watch silly movies and tell jokes. It's so important to just maintain a positive outlook. It helps so much. And you watch a funny movie and you start laughing, and then, you know, it helps you forget a little bit, and then you continue to fight your battle and the battle that we're doing. So yeah, we have so many ideas. I've decided to join forces with Ray and be part of his board. And we are coming up with all kinds of things where we can do work for people. And I remember connecting with someone who was former law enforcement. He retired. He was a chief in different cities and states, and he has extensive experience with TI and what's going on there, and he's an advocate. So I foresee that a lot of our law enforcement may already be aware of it, and not everyone is on board. There are law enforcement, you have everything good and maybe not so good, but I really believe that we need to reach out and make connections and establish relationships with law enforcement, with allies, people that are not targets, not being targeted, but understand what's going on and they want to support the cause. So it's making a broad network of scientists, law enforcement, allies, people that are not experiencing it, but they are aware, professors that have worked on this and researched it, lawyers, and I think that's very important. So the more people we bring together, credible people that, you know, have done the research, done the work, have experienced it, and are one with our community coming together, because the more people we have working on this, the stronger we are, and the more headway we can make sooner. So yes, right, Ray? That's what we're working on.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of other things.
It's happening. I mean, I've talked to police. They know, many police know it's happening. Many police are aware of energy weapons as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's face it, it's 2020. Okay, you know, the gun and the club and the knife, it's been a while. So what has happened since? Why are the codes that we do and the training for law enforcement is so backward? It's stuck back 100 years practically. And it's because it's such an edge. It's such an advantage that people want to hold it under wraps. But I can point you to an FBI law enforcement bulletin, which is kind of like a newsletter that says on there, energy devices are going to begin to replace guns and other traditional things in the very near future. So law enforcement knows about it. It's just that they're not supposed to talk about some of these things because among other things, the vocabulary, you know, how do they address the shortcoming in the codes?
They're very careful with language, you know. This is the kind of stuff I research so I can write about it. Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's so important for more whistleblowers to come forward, because we know that there's a whole community of experts, scientists, professionals that have worked on technology to abuse people, to violate the rights, to mind control. And, you know, for whatever reason, maybe they're scared, maybe there's a confidentiality agreement or some other thing that they're not coming forward. But now I really feel like now is the perfect time for people to come forward. I feel like things are ripe. I feel like I feel a shift in the energy in just my environment. Like I see people being held accountable every day. More and more people are being held accountable. And so I'm thinking now is the perfect time for everybody to get together and work on whatever it is. Maybe it's not TI work, maybe it's something else that's your cause, but I feel like now is the time to come forward, tell your stories, tell your experiences, and make things better for everyone else. And this is the perfect time. I feel very motivated, very excited. I feel like I have challenging times ahead of me, but I have support. I know initially I felt totally alone. Nobody has my back. I'm doing this all by myself. But you know what? Then I started meeting people like Ray and other people that are helping so many survivors, so many advocates and warriors, because that is what we are. If you've been experiencing any level or semblance of this weapons or just assaults, you are a warrior because you're still here. Their end game is to take us out, to silence us. But if you're still in the battle, then you're a survivor. You're not a statistic, and there's hope. So
absolutely. And as you say, it's very much the time for exposure. Everybody's speaking out on so many different causes, right? Things are coming to the light of day, things are being disclosed, so this is the right time. And standing together is always a wonderful thing. And I actually, as a writer, I encourage everybody to write reports, especially organizations like yours. Write reports, reveal and share the information that you have come to understand. Put it out there. And by the way, I'd be happy to post your work on my media site anytime. So just
awesome.
if you have any articles or information you want to post, just let me know.
Well, I love the call to action that Denise just put out. That was, you can't replace the energy and the fighting spirit and the love that goes into servicing communities such as these. There's no, you just can't pretend. You can't make it up. It just wouldn't be as good. People are fighting. I get emails from lawyers that have been just laying low and scared, doing nothing. They let their license taken away because they talked about implants, for example. And I was like, you can't let that happen. Look, we're going to work with you and try to get that back. And there is people from all over the country, in fact, from all over the world, sending me evidence, sending me reports. And it is a real, real movement. This is a fantastic development for this community that has suffered so long. And, that call to action is come forward. Bring what you have. It's the only way you're going to get any justice in this, not by laying low and hiding. There's nowhere to hide. There's no way to avoid the satellites or the corner guy. Or most people report that hiding doesn't work. Being inactive doesn't work. So you might as well do something. Step
exactly.
Help
absolutely
that are helping you. Help Ramola. Help Denise. Help me. Help the moderators of your podcast. Put forward something. If you can afford even a small payment per month, say you can afford $5, $10, 15. The difference you're going to make is a groundswell. Each and every one of you making a difference by your small sacrifice every month, so that people will be there for you. We want to keep this going. We want to make this bigger. We're already got cases in multiple states.
Absolutely. And if you don't have $5, there's other ways you can get involved. You can send energy to the cause. I was telling Ray, like, if we did a little visualization every day, you don't have to physically come together. Anywhere you are, 5 to 15 minutes a day, just setting an intention and sending positive vibes to the community for truth, for justice, for us that are working on these matters, it makes a big difference. And if that's not up your alley, there's other ways. Maybe there's little rallies we can do. I don't like to call them protests. Again, I'm very careful with the way I use words. I don't like protests. It has a very negative connotation, but I'll attend a peace rally, or I'll attend a rally for truth and justice, where people will come together and say, okay, let's put an end to this and let's tell our truth. This is what's happening. So I think it's important to get involved in whatever it is. $5 a week, you don't have that set, send positive vibes. That's not your thing. Get involved in a rally or flyers or, Facebooking and posting about the cause. Any little bit, anything that you do energetically for the cause is going to help. So let's do it.
Absolutely. I would absolutely echo that, because everything sort of adds to that positive energy and outpouring of work energy that, comes out of your organization, other groups, and so on. So, and I'm also very encouraged that you actually have been writing letters, and you're taking legal action by writing legal action letters, for instance, to preempt that person's blacklisting in the neighborhood by contacting people.
Yes.
So those are absolutely reassuring things to hear about. And I hope that people listening are equally encouraged and reassured, and that people step forward to help you. Shall we just name your websites once again and send people to them one more time as we bring this conversation to a close? And if there are any closing words that you'd like to say, feel free.
Well, Romola, thank you for having us, first of all, and for your efforts and work for this beleaguered community. Every little thing that gets done for people in this situation is a grand gesture. It really is. The website for the Legal Co-op is thelegalcoop.wordpress.com. That's THELEGALCOOP.wordpress.com. I have a GoFundMe as well, which people can see what has been done. And it's a substantive GoFundMe. It's got articles and links, including discussions of the Havana weapons, discussions of COINTELPRO, listings, current information. So it's there. It's gofundme.com/thelegalcoop. No spaces, no dashes, and that's the effort that I'm undertaking. Denise has a separate GoFundMe, and I have offered people, said, if you right now donate $99 to Denise, we will both work on a letter of support for you and examine your situation and see if we can give you that credibility. The letter is addressed to whom it may concern. So you can give that to an employer and it will tell them you are a person that's dealing with controversial subjects. There is resistance to that at any time in history. There always has been. And you're exposed to rumor campaigns, which are false. We'll vouch for what we know about you and stand behind you as you go through this situation. So Denise, go ahead. Tell me what.
So yeah, it's youradvocates4justice.com, and my email is youradvocate@protonmail.com.
Your
And you'll find
advocate
also,
singular, right? Your advocate
yes.
at protonmail.com. And did you have an email that you wish to share, Ray? Or?
Thank you, Romola. Appreciate that. Yes, it is the Legal Co-op. Again, no spaces or dashes. LEGALCOOP@protonmail.com. But one of these days, I'm going to get a dash. I promise. Because everybody seems to want it.
So there's no chance to call you a coop, huh?
It's just more comedy for me, Ray. Don't change it now.
Well, there you have it, everybody. We have email addresses, we have websites, so you know how to contact Denise and Ray. And what I'll do also is I'll post the links below this video. And if there are any other links, anything else you wish to send to me to post, by all means, feel free. I'll stick it below in the video description box. And, people are welcome to connect with Ray and Denise if you are targeted, harassed, stalked wrongfully. And that's another term people use, right? Quite often, wrongfully targeted, which is pretty much the case, it seems, with most everybody.
Usually the case. Right.
Yeah. So if you are wrongfully targeted.
Somebody else came up with something called ITI, illegally targeted individual. It's a wonderful volunteer from Northern California. So ITI.
ITI, illegally targeted individual, or wrongfully targeted, or whatever you wish to call yourself. Or
illegally interested individual. Oh, that's interesting.
Illegally interested. Well, if you need help with legal support and advice and counseling from the legal arena, by all means, please contact Denise and Ray for further information. So first of all, Denise and Ray, I want to thank you so much for the work that you are doing. It's truly selfless. And it sounds like both of you are bringing to it your respective backgrounds, your history of work, experience, and your energy. And I love what you said, everything you said about energy, by the way, Denise, because these things are really real.
It's real.
The more I explore, consciousness, science, and the mind, we are all exploring the mind today. I'm realizing, yes, energy is so important. It's these things are real. The energy of intention is real, and our willpower sort of contributes to our strong-mindedness. So these things are not really, ideas that people have anymore. They're actually real.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to try to be positive, because when you're in a state and you're feeling down, that's you're perfect to be triggered and you're vulnerable, and that's when they come after you the hardest, kind of like close the deal, get rid of this person. And I get in those states sometimes and I'm like, okay, let me go talk to my best friend and laugh about something, and it just is so uplifting and it makes a world of difference. And I think that together we can make a difference. I do believe that we will be victorious in all facets moving forward. And, you know, we need your support. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful to you for having us. And I want to continue. I feel like, and I will share this. And sometimes when I'm getting ready to do something like this, I'll have some struggle right before, you know, something that'll like really put me in a negative state of mind. And I'm beginning to connect the dots. Every time I have something either really important to do, like writing a complaint for my case or a response or whatever, I feel those heightened energies like trying to get me to be angry and upset and volatile. And then I'm like noticing a pattern. It's when I'm working on something important and meaningful for the community. And so right before getting on this podcast, I had a similar experience where I found myself very upset and, oh my gosh, and my ego, even a little bit of my ego getting out of it. And then I was like, reminded myself, remember, this is what happens because they don't want you to speak. And so I find that it's even more important for me to continue to tell my story because they don't want me to. So I vow to continue to speak. I will never stop speaking. I will always fight. And I am a warrior. And I'm looking forward to meeting more like-minded people. We need to come together. So thank you, Romola, for having
Oh,
us.
you're very welcome. What a wonderful
Add one more
anecdote.
thing, Ramola, if I can. Since we're
Go
on
ahead.
spirituality, I am very spiritual myself. I know you wouldn't expect lawyers to be spiritual, but I don't think I would have made it this far if I didn't have faith in God.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think that's something we all share. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that conviction may be one of the reasons why we are targeted. It's by some quarters anyway, because these things happen. I mean, we have to look back in history only to see the Israelis were persecuted by the Egyptians, the Christians were persecuted by the Israelis were persecuted by the Romans, and you know, Jews again by the Nazis, and it's always going on. The historical pattern that occurs and recurs. And with faith in God and in doing the righteous thing, I believe we can prevail in all circumstance. I have that faith. And so I share with you those spiritual values in that sense.
Thank you. You know, that's such a wonderful note to close this on because, as many people say, we are all sort of living in a time period where there's some kind of spiritual battle between good and evil kind of waging all around us and immersing us in it. So it becomes doubly important to stay positive, as you say, Denise, and keep that shining light of your soul, you know, shining high so everybody can see it, despite all the negativity that gets thrown at you, regardless, you know, despite all that, to continue.
Absolutely.
And I also wanted to say this is, you know, it's empowering as well when people come together. If you ever wish to come forward again and, you know, do a panel again to report what you're working on, just shoot me an email and we can do
Absolutely.
it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Romola.
You're very welcome. And I'd also like to actually have panels with the whole group. So, you know, I'll keep you posted. So if you'd like to be a part of that, by all
Sure.
means, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We really look forward to doing that. Absolutely right.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thanks so much, Ray, for this afternoon's conversation. Thank you, Denise. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Romola. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.